The furnaces cough, and the conveyor belts slow to a dusty halt. The air tastes of iron and cold alarm light. You wake into the half-dark at shift change, lamps running on emergency capacitors, and the whole camp reduced to a chorus of hisses and breath. Outside, the comm antenna is a dead spike against the sky. No relay whispering imperial codes, no traffic from the surface rigs. Inside, the Adeptus Mechanicus tech priests of Scarran Prospect argue over diagnostic rites with the same ritual patience they use on engines, fingers tracing sigils on soot-streaked plates as if their prayers could coax the grids back to life. Miners line up under their soft, failing lights for water. You feel the place fold inward until every corridor leads to the same hard question. You take stock because you must. Your authority here is not a badge or a title. It is the ledger of who eats, who breathes, and who goes on. You touch the metal rail by the canteen and count with your eyes. The furnaces can be coaxed on for 3 full work cycles if the tertiary feed is spared. Life support can limp on for about 40 hours at current consumption. The surface rig's generator, old, racked, and pitted, will take a team and at least 2 hours to jury rig, maybe 4 if the antenna's gearbox is frozen. The salvage crew are half a dozen. Seasoned and quiet, they smell of tar and salt, and one of them keeps cleaning his hands on an oil-stained rag, though there is no oil to spare. There are children in the lower barracks, teeth chattering under threadbare blankets. There is a priest who prays loud enough to make his voice a physical thing in the breathing room. You line them up in the dark like coins and ask yourself which to spend. The miners are the first to speak, though their words are clipped by exhaustion. "We keep the belts," says Jax, the shift foreman. His name tastes like dust on your tongue. He stands with his sleeves rolled, a thin scar cutting across his knuckles. "If you strip power from the smelters, we lose ore. We lose credits. That keeps the rationers fed in the long run." His voice is practical. He looks at you for a bargain. Behind him, an older woman folds her hands around a hot cup, steam fogging against the low light. She says nothing, but she watches your face as if you can write provisions into being. Across the room, the tech priests are performing small ceremonies with screwdrivers and amperage meters. One of them, taller with a webbing of brass under his skin, murmurs about flux harmonics and the sanctity of relay code, and he keeps calling for a calibrant they don't have. He is not asking for your permission, only for the time and the power to run diagnostics. His rights would buy a chance to call neighbors, maybe even the administratum. But the calibrant would need to be siphoned from the smelter's feedback transformers. The priest's eyes, pale and flat, hold a belief that is almost tender, that to speak to the machine is to be granted answers. Faith is an economy. Here, as much currency as ore. You think of the surface rig as a thin, hopeful thing suspended above a world that owes you nothing. It is exposed to salt winds and the chance of scavenger bans. You imagine the rig's walkway, slick with frost, the antenna's gears jammed by grit. You imagine a salvage crew climbing into a sky whose light has gone wrong and coming back with either a working transmitter or empty hands and fewer smiles. Sending them feels like rolling a die on the future. A miner steps forward, voice low. "Kids in barracks too. The older lot will hold the light if we send the runners. They don't need the smelters for 2 cycles. He gestures to the thin shaft of light down the corridor where little shoes lie by mattresses. But the smelters, if they go cold, the claim rights die with them. We lose this place for good." He looks at you for prognostication, for a moral engine with a clear output. Your role is to decide who is expendable in the calculus of survival. You walk the camp as if checking circuits. The infirmary heater is quiet, metal racks clatter when a breeze finds them. You pass the supply locker and run your fingers over ration tins dulled by coal dust. A young mechanic, her face smeared with graphite and faith, is looping a copper braid around a fuse box, whispering a prayer to the machine. You know her hand. She fixed the lift last month after the northern tremor. She looks up when you approach and says, "We can make a run for the rig. We can patch the gearbox if we have the right torque sequence." You can hear the eager tiredness under her words. She is volunteering her life for a chance at the radio. Decisions here are not abstract morals. They are the feel of metal and the measured hiss of air when a seal holds or fails. You imagine the generators wiring as vanes and your choices as clamps. Clamp here, and the lungs of the lower barracks go still sooner. Clamp there, and the ore you have bled from the rock becomes worthless scrap. You're not choosing between good and evil. You are choosing between better or worse. The tech priest presses a sensory stylus into your palm as if offering a relic. It vibrates faintly, a mechanical heartbeat. The relay is silent because of analog resonance collapse, he says, the terms like chisels. We can attempt to retune the primary waveguide if successful. We restore contact and bring authority back. Without authority, the surface rangers will not come to claim salvage. He sounds confident in the way someone is confident that a ritual works because it has been done before, like a recipe. You feel that certainty nudging your ribs. You listen to the miners argue, then to the priest explain, then to the soft pleadings of the barracks. Each appeals to a different ledger: ore for currency, signal for authority, and air for life. You measure time by how quickly the lamps dim. The emergency capacitors will hold for 2 hours at current draw, 1 hour if the smelters are fed. Somewhere past the rim of your station, a planet wind begins to take up a new rhythm, a low moan that might turn into a storm. You taste metal on your tongue and see the faces of the people you would be asked to leave. You call Mara to you. She is not a tech priest, nor a man of paperwork. She is a salvage leader, lithe and impatient, with a cigarette smoke laugh that never reaches her eyes. She stands with her harness in hand, the crew's patch on her sleeve frayed to the point of being a memory. You ask about the rig, its walkway, the antenna's gearbox, the risk of exposure, and she gives you the numbers like the map of a wound. 2 hours to prep, 4 hours if the gearbox needs cutting. The route is exposed to wind shear and loose stone. We don't have the wind for a safe climb, she says. But we can go if we must. We can leave before the second bell and be back before the capacitors burn through. You weigh the promises whispered at you over the last cycles. The company man who said, "Keep the ore and they'll trade for rations." The priest who said prayers will summon the omniscias. Favor the rationer who said there are always ways to stretch tins if the smelters feed the mint. You are tired of promises, but you are also tired of the idea of people dying because a seal blew. You cannot accept both risks. Choices here have gravity. Once they pull, they do not let go. You remember a face you promised once to an old foreman on your first claim. "Keep them breathing," he'd said, tapping your chest with a knuckled finger. The voice was gruff, but you understood. Leaders live on the promises they keep, not the ones they make. You close your eyes for a moment and see the children in Barracks 2, the salvage crews, hands on the rig, Jack's scarred knuckles. You make the arithmetic quietly, the way a surgeon decides which limb to save. You decide, and your voice is short. Mara takes 2 teams. Jax holds the belts for another shift. Ration distribution moves to barracks, and the infirmary cycles down to essentials only. The camp listens. The tech priest raises a hand, measuring the loss like an offering. If the salvage party returns with the antenna online, we restore authority and regular shipments, you say. You may be telling a hope. You may be making a bet. The salvage crew will leave under your order. Someone will stay behind because the generator's feed must be split. Mara nods, the motion slight, a condensed decision. She pulls her harness tighter, and hands a torch to her second, a young man with a stare that hasn't learned to blink. Jax clamps his jaw and walks back to the smelters, boots clanking, already counting the cycles in his head. The priest begins to chant in magnetized tones over the diagnostic panels, coaxing microcurrents like prayers into a willing shape. The barracks shift children under thicker blankets. You move to the main console and twist the manual shunt, small motions that reroute amperes like tides. Power bleeds from the belts in a measured fashion and fills the crippled. Life support, and you can hear the lower barracks ventilation stutter into steadiness. As the salvage crew assembles under the failing lamps, you feel the camp's weight shift. Sending them means removing hands from the smelters. Rerouting the generator means someone must sit in the dark and count breaths. Your choice has been made, and already it is creating consequences you cannot stop. A final thing you do is look each person in the eye and name what you ask of them. Names are promises. Promises are commands. Mara's crew steps toward the main shaft. Their boots kick up old ore dust that hangs in the weak light like a constellation of small losses. The tech priest seals a small glass cylinder with a wet thumb and hands it to Mara, a charm, half ritual, half warranty. Jax watches them go, then watches the smelters, hands folded around a wrench like a rosary. The children sleep on. You stand on the gantry and watch the salvage party disappear into the raw air above the rig, breath gone cold in your throat. Below, the belts are quieter. The furnace is cooling at a pace you have calculated and accepted. The camp moves with a new, fragile purpose, some to repair, some to guard what remains, some to hope that the surface voices will return. You have chosen who goes and who stays. Now you must let the decision do its work and prepare for whatever answer comes down the antenna shaft, silence or song. The ladders creak as Mara climbs, and you count the beats until they reach the rig and either find the transmitter alive or find only wind. You count the cans by the light of a flickering lamp, the tin lips whispering against the ledger like tiny bones. The manifest is a slow thing, a drumbeat beneath the colony's sudden silence. How many calories? How many liters of scrubbed air? The spare filters stacked like small tombstones on the shelf. Each number tilts the world a little. There is a metallic smell to the stores, oils and old sweat. Then the sweeter, acrid tang of ration bars that have been vacuum sealed 3 times. Warden Ivara stands over the table, fingers stained with ore dust, eyes narrowed as if the digits on the page are glyphs of fate. She reads them the way you might read a prayer. Low, precise, as if tone could bend the future. 2 months, she says without looking up. Her voice keeps the conversation from scattering. At our current burn, you look at the jerky packets and the water drums. You imagine faces, small, bread-lined, tired, lining up for the morning ration. The lamps in the habitation cells flare when the scrubbers cycle. Heat shudders through the hull plating. The tally insists on logic when fear wants to invent miracles. The manifest is clinical about what you have and merciless about what you do not. Ivara slides a finger down the column. We cut the daily allotment by 10%. Engines get maintenance fuel only. Smelters idle 3 shifts. Rotate miners into reclamation. They will strip any non-essential machinery for sealant, for filters. No exceptions. Her edict lands like a hard slap on the meeting. The foreman, broad-shouldered, beard the color of the slag he shifts, opens his mouth. He speaks of quotas and contracts. His words rattle with a fear that looks like anger. You can't cut the smelters, he snaps. If we stop production, the company cuts the line. No ore shipped, no pay. People will leave. Someone else whispers about the orbital silence, a rumor that arrived on the thin wind like a seed. that a blockade hangs above the planet, that relay beacons speaking to the void have fallen mute because someone in orbit decided these transmissions didn't matter. The word blockade pulls at everyone's throat because blockade means more than a strategic choke. Blockade means leverage. Blockade means whose guns are pointed at your sky gets to decide whether relief ships dock or turn away. You feel the room narrowing. There is the clack of boots, the soft whine of a child in the back whose mother presses a palm to their mouth. Warden Ivaras hand taps the ledger again, like a metronome. Rumors are not plans, she says. We base policy on inventory and observation. Policy feels brittle. People begin trading theory like currency. One man says the blockade is an act of extortion by a private concern, mercantile corsairs with void shields thin as patched tarp. Another says it is an orbital militia testing control of supply lines. Each explanation is grain-thin and dangerous. Whoever controls the ore controls the colony's bargaining chip. Whoever holds the ore can buy silence, buy fuel, decide which ships get cleared. In that way, the rocks you scrape from the mountains become a coin of salvation or a rope that will hang you. A mother with oil-smudged hair stands and petitions to leave. Her voice is high and raw. If the ships won't come, we have to make our own way, she says. Trade the ore for a run. I have children. There is a murmur of agreement that smells of panic. People begin to argue prices and routes. A miner suggests bartering high-grade ore to a trading cutter known in whispered circles, an entity called the Lyris Band that traffics in quick shipments and fewer questions. A technician counters that dealing with void cutters is like bargaining with wolves. You get food for now, and they take your shafts and your souls later. Threats hang under the words, thin and ugly. You listen, and you think about the oscillation of power here. It was always simple. Raw extraction on the surface, orders from above, credits handed down like verdicts. But the relay silence has rearranged that cathedral. Now the commodity under your hands is both lifeblood and leverage. You can hand it over for a one-way flight. Or you can hold it, brace the colony, and hope aid will come from the same direction that used to. Either choice births new enemies, or makes friends from strangers with teeth. Barter now and you feed the next week, the foreman says. Barter now and the company may still come for its cut, and if their cut comes with guns, a woman in the corner asks. Her voice is small but direct. Who will stop them? Ivaras' answer is not an answer, it is an allocation. She turns the ledger like a talisman and begins to redistribute labor with a bureaucrat's cruelty. Miners who had been meant for the daily pit will now walk conveyor belts sealing insulation, patching thermal seams, learning to read the health lights on engines. The colony's smiths will move to the refineries to coax more fuel from slag. Children of miners will be taught ration accounting to replace scribes that once sat in offices far above the plates. Ivaras' commands are practical, frugal, and not sentimental. She balances bodies against chance and comes up with a plan that will keep hearts beating for 2 months in the event of no relief. Make the recon team, you say into the room. The words are simple. They land with the clarity of action. The room doesn't fill with agreement. Exactly, it folds into the next necessary thing, the way a wound accepts sutures. The recon must confirm whether the silence is passive, equipment failed, relay died, or deliberate. A hand over the ear of the system from someone chilling above in the void. If the silence is deliberate, the politics change. If the silence is just failure, you still need to know how deep the damage goes and whether you can fix it with spare parts. You assign Marta and Cirque. Marta is lean, a woman with a scar that runs under her left eye like an old riverbed. She moves quietly, habitual and precise, the kind of person who counts bolts in her sleep. Cirque is younger and more restless, fingers always twitching near a tool, voice quick with questions. Give them a drone, you decide. Give them the beacon suit, a cramped ascent harness that bites at the shoulders, a tether, and a handful of batteries. Give them a path that will taste like rust and ozone. People argue over the composition of the team. Some want a larger complement, more guns, more hands. Ivara refuses. The beacon is close enough that size is a liability. Small is speed, small is deniability. You watch the foreman's jaw tighten and imagine the numbers that pass through his head. The cost of loss versus the cost of hope. Some families signed petitions to leave some sign deals that would sell a season of ore for a runs fare. Paper slips exchange hands, sealed with shaking thumbs. Bartering becomes a liturgy in a corner. You do not like what that exchange suggests about the future, but your duty is not to like. It is to act. Marta squats before the cradle and runs her palm over the metal, like a parent would smooth a child's hair. The ascent cradle is a thing of industry and thrift, scored, patched with resin, the paint worn away where hands grip. The beacon itself is a tall mast pushing a single dish toward the black, rings like a skeleton through the sky. Up there, if the stories are true, are relays that shout messages into orbit. The beacon's footings hum with the last warmth of the day as technicians feed it the final power that will let its dish try to pierce whatever yawns above. Cirque tightens the drone's stabilizers and snaps the casing shut. His breath fogs in the thin air. If they're blocking us, he says, not asking, we might find jammers or ghost signals. If it's dead, then it's salvage. You will need eyes outward, Marta replies. Her voice is calm in a way that tries to make the future look like a puzzle to be solved, not just at the dish. Check the uplink, the power feed, the transceivers. Look for signs of external override, physical tampering, foreign code. Listen for patterns. Listen, you repeat, and return. She nods, the scar at her cheek tightening with the movement. You hand Marta the last of the spare filter packs for the suit. Cirque takes the tether and tests it by tugging. The sound of the tether snapping taught you where thinness lies. You watch Cirque's face as though you could see the future in the small flexing of his fingers. He doesn't laugh. The training has already made them both serious. There is an undercurrent to the room now, a split between those who want to concede the ore to secure immediate safety and those who would hold fast for the longer game. The two groups exchange words like weapons. A man who runs the transport chassis, thin and quick-talking, hisses that selling to cutters is the only way to guarantee a flight out for merchants and their families. Another, older, quiet and close to the refineries, says that selling your veins for a bedtime story is not survival, but surrender. You weigh it and find it wrong in principle, but right in necessity to seek proof first. Without knowledge, you can only gamble. With knowledge, you can shape a strategy that might, in time, bend events to your favor. The recon is not heroic. It is a small, pragmatic strike against total uncertainty. The sun falls. The beacon dish turns from copper to black. Marta runs a final check with gloved hands. The drone's little lights blink like stubborn stars. Cirque straps the tether to his harness with the kind of quick, clinical movements that come from learning not to tremble. He taps the relay on the drone's case, and the device replies with a soft click. The cradle hums, and a little steam shivers off the rooftop. There are hands on shoulders as people file past, murmuring blessings that are less about faith than about making it through another day. Children peer up from behind crates, eyes wide, fingertips sticky with old sugar. The air fills with the low, animal sound of a habitat bracing itself. Orders are barked softly. A prayer is murmured under breath. Marta pulls the visor down, and the world blinks into a narrow circle of glass. You think of the ledger with its neat columns and know that numbers are not moral guides. They are instruments. But behind each column are faces, and those faces press like winter against your chest. You authorize the launch. Because the decision is a point of motion, you refuse to let paralysis set the colony's tempo. Motion might not save you, but in a place cut off from the stars, it is the only honest response. The drone lifts. It is small against the hulking dish, but its blades hum with a hungry intensity. Cirque's voice crackles in the open channel, tight with the echo of the cradle. Marta's answer on the line is short, methodical. The drone climbs along the tether, singing across the sky in a sound like distant rain. You watch until the cradle's light swallows them and the dish becomes a silhouette against the dying light. You cannot yet know what the orbit holds, a patrol with teeth and a list of demands, a corporate picket that will auction your ore, a simple mechanical failure whose cure is solar and time. You only know this. The colony can do one thing now that it could not do at dawn. It can seek the truth itself. You hold the ledger and imagine the numbers bending with the news the drone will bring. The debate will shift. People will choose. Threats will either sharpen into action or dissolve into bargaining. For the first time since the relays fell silent, you have set something toward the sky. The tether tightens as the drone reaches the dish. The comm channel fills with the brittle noise of static, and then beneath it, the fine clinical breath of sensors finding metal. Marta's voice comes through again, softer now, threaded with concentration. "I'm seeing a lock," she says. "External signature, not atmospheric. You let the words hang. They are a hinge. You think of ore as coin, as leverage, as lifeline. You think of the men and women who will make the next votes. You think of the families who signed papers in a panic an hour ago. Someone upstairs in orbit is making choices that will ripple down to your ration table and to whether the child's cough in the back gets tended before dawn. You authorize the drone to push closer. You watch the dish through the visor of the darkening sky and know the colony is about to learn whether its fate will be bargained by a hand above or decided by its own small, stubborn will. The tether creaks. Marta's breath is a steady metronome. Cirque hums under his breath as the drone peers into the dish's throat. Whatever they find will not answer everything. It will start something. The room smelled of oil and old smoke. Lamps swung overhead, throwing knives of light across the council table, and every face was a map of the colony's last frayed week. When the relays died, the darkness arrived like a hand over the throat of the world. No distant replies from the trade hubs, no automated freight manifests, nothing but the raw hiss of failing power. We had been used to silence as a threat on the fringes. This silence moved in close. Even the generators sounded as if they were listening. Jared, the scout, stayed where he always did, at the edge of light, grime tracked like a stripe across his cheek. He spoke quietly, the way a man tells a wound, and the room leaned in. He said a cutter gang had taken to trailing the convoys, sliding like a shadow on wheels. He said they didn't want cargo so much as the bargaining point that cargo bought. Men, tools, the simple leverage of hunger. Then he showed us the seam pictures. The new Scarnite cut had a stain across it like spilled ink. The tech priest, old Relis, didn't touch the hollow. He whispered a word that made everyone shift. Warp bloom. He said the machines coughed where the stone bled, and the men who touched it began to dream in absolutes. The word hung between us like an accusation. No one wanted to say it fully. Relis had no priestly chorus with him, no sanctified robes, only a hand-cranked scanner and a face that told me he'd seen something he could not pray away. He described the symptoms plainly. Motors hiccuped, servos jittered in rhythm with the seam. A fan in the orbins that had run for months died and then spun again with an idle deafness. The men who worked closest to the new vein woke with a hard look in their eyes, as if they had been given a truth and could not unsee it. One wandered the queue at the refectory, palm flat against the Scar Knight picture on the slate, and whispered a name none of us knew, as if it explained everything. And damn it, I remembered then 1,000 small economies we had let accumulate. Food shipments came on a rhythm, medical supplies, parts for the pumps, lubricant for the great crushers. The mine was not just a job, it was the colony's pulse. Burn that seam and we starved the pumps and the forges and the nursery. Exploit it, and we might let a sickness smolder like a coal under ash, allowed to flare up and take us in our sleep. Those were the two knives on the table. The choice was obscene in its simplicity: quarantine and burn, or take the ore and gamble on cure and containment. I ordered a vote. It was the only way I knew to lay the burden where more hands might share the weight. Councilman muttered. Miners spat on their boots. The tech priest wanted a seal, an ancient burn rite he insisted would purify the substrate and stop the bloom. The medic, Ilana, argued for containment. She had seen a worker's dreams bleed into waking and turn fine hands to panic. The foreman, Borat, kept his jaw set. He said the colony could not afford a sealed claim, and that a convoy left unladen gave the Cutter gang license to finish what hunger had begun. He wanted ore moved under armed escort, and he wanted it now. Votes are fragile things when people are hungry. The morning list was long. We had the miners, the smelters, the engineers who coaxed life from rust, every child of the pit with a specific calculus. The mine fed us. They cheered when the ore planners were fired, when Borat promised shifts and ration boosts to men who would take the seam's edge. The priests and the medic, the old families and those who had lost kin under strange sweats, voted to burn. Their faces were grave. They spoke of contagion not as a rumor, but as a thing that consumed trust, as if accepting the ore was signing a paper that read, "We were not careful." There were tears on both sides. I felt the room tilt into debate, into shouting, into the small, sudden violence of words. I watched Relis walk to the seam pictures again. He traced a finger over the stain on the hollow and did not look at anyone as he spoke. He described dreams as if they were weather, a heavy fog that wrapped men in visions of light and of order and always of ending. He said machines reacted as if offended, as if the metal itself remembered another gravity and did not like it. When he finished, he asked me a question that had no comfortable answer. He wanted the claim sealed in lead, buried, and ignited until the Scar Knight itself broke down into slag. He asked for a pyre to be built where the seams lay and for the convoy roads to be closed. He wanted quarantine. Quarantine condemns half this room, Borat shot back. He had mud under his nails and a voice like a breaker. We lose the ore, we lose the contracts. People starve. We send nothing out. The Cutters take what we have anyway. This place will fragment. Men will go to the gangs just to eat. If men join gangs, they do so as less than men, Relis said softly. I would rather see them die free than survive corrupted. That's not a choice, Elena said, and I heard the strain of a woman who had seen both sides of death. We can seal the seam temporarily. We can burn the first cuts and keep the rest under sensor watch. We can ration less pain, more time. There are options that are not binary, options smoothed nothing. The Cutter gang loomed like a steady drum. The relay's silence had hollowed our usual leverage. No trade lines meant no easy barter to buy time. No relay meant no quick call for outside security. On top of that, the stain in the Scar Knight moved, in the way water moved if you watched for hours. A slow, insidious crawl across tone and texture. The scanner logs showed faint electromagnetic anomalies, then stilled. Relis said the patterns matched nothing canonical he could cite. He used a word I didn't know, and then apologized for his terror. We all did things like that in the room. Apologize for fear. The vote split us down the middle, as votes in tired places often do. I could have deferred. I had deferred decisions before, and watched indecision eat morale from the inside. Instead, I made a call that would tilt the colony onto a new axis. I ordered a strike team led by Borit to harvest a measured cut under strict containment protocols, sensors at every mouth, unarmed watchers, Ilana's med crew on site. We would move ore out with minimum exposure. Simultaneously, I instructed Relis and a small cadre of engine wrights to prepare the burn apparatus, to stand ready to seal and incinerate the seam if contagion indicators rose past a threshold. We would work both paths, take risks and have an exit. It was the pragmatic thing to do. It was also a provocation. The room broke in ways I didn't expect. Some left with a steady stride, hands sure of their tools. Others slammed doors and swore they would not be complicit. A handful of the older mothers prayed openly. Borit nodded once and left by the longer corridor, his boots a metronome in the darkness. Ilana stayed, her jaw clenched, eyes red. She did not like the risk. Relis gathered his instruments with a slow, bone-deep calm that made him seem more priest than mechanic. Jared sat up from the corner and said nothing, his fingers worrying at a patch on his sleeve that had once been blood. The division was no longer argument. It was movement. People went where they could keep their conscience. That night, the convoys did not move. The relays were dead, and nothing in the outer road slid like a promise. The Cutter Gang's shadow was assumed to be near. The scouts had smelled them like a change in wind. We moved in small measured ways instead. Borer's team sealed helmets and gloves, slung sensors along chutes, and the ore planners hummed in a sound that made the skin along my arms prick. Relis wired the burn charges and paced through liturgy he had not spoken in years. Ilana walked the faces of the crew and told them to tell her immediately of any sleep that felt like a story clasping their minds. There were jokes to be made about discipline. There was no laughter. When we finally lowered the first sampling chutes into the stained seam, the air changed. It was subtle at first, a metallic sweetness beneath the diesel, like pennies melted into the breath of the mine. The cutter's threat felt distant until a truck horn called from the outer ridge. 3 short blasts. It was the convoy returning early, a shape at the edge of the valley, the driver waving frantically. A man in Boret's team ran for the light and came back white-faced. They were stopped, he said, at the West Pass. Cutters asked for manifest. The driver refused. They took his cargo anyway. Said they would be back for the rest if we didn't cooperate. That news arrived like a new weather system. People clenched and unclenched. There were threats exchanged over the radio, scratches of profanity into a language we do not use much in council chambers. I sent Jared and 2 others to shadow the road and to see what could be gleaned. I ordered extra guards on the convoy route, even though guards without relay support felt like a gesture. I felt the colony's fragile trust snapping in places I could not immediately stitch. Later, under the bleached lamps of the ore bay, I watched a miner named Heisa touch the sample tray with the edge of her glove. She had been with us a decade and had a laugh that made the children at the nursery quiet down to listen. She held the sample and closed her eyes, and for a long second she smiled as if remembering something warm. Then she began to cry. The tears were not dramatic, they were small and steady. "It's beautiful," she said, and no one could tell if she meant the stone or the dream. Borit put an arm around her and then pulled away as if burned. When I called the strike team in, one of the engine wrights refused orders outright. His hands were steady as he set down his tool, and his refusal was not defiance, so much as a line drawn where his morality had set a boundary. He said he would not work on ore that made men see absolutes. He left through the back door and did not return. His absence became a signal. Others followed in small, stealthy steps. A mechanic here, a mother there who said she could not risk her son's mind for pay. The team we had prepared shrank in the hour before dawn. I could have wrestled, I suppose. I could have sent guards to drag men back to post to enforce quotas by muscle. Those are expedient things leaders do when scared. Instead, I called them all to the pit mouth and told them what we would try to do. Harvest a controlled amount, test it, lock the seam, and if corruption grew, burn the vein with the pyre. I lied carefully. I told them it was a compromise. Some believed me, others did not. The split hardened into something practical, those willing to work. The seam put on gloves, those not, watched from the edge and prepared for a different future. As the light shifted and the first bucket creaked into the tray, I felt the weight of 100 unseen decisions press like weather on my shoulders. There were men outside in the dark, moving because hunger taught faster lessons than conscience. There were voices inside praying for absolution or vindication. The relay still did not answer. The Cutter Gang's shadow was a staccato threat on the horizon, and beneath everything, in the heart of the mine, the stain gleamed like an invitation and a warning. I gave the order to start the sampler. We moved because movement buys decisions time, and because inaction had already begun to kill us in smaller, surer ways. As the first sample slid into the analyzer, Relis murmured a charm under his breath, and Elena checked pulses along the line. Outside, Jared returned with news that 2 cutters had been sighted, trading with refugees at the West Pass they were paying with tools they took from our outposts. The cut had already been made. There was no returning to the moment before the relays died. We were on a new axis now. The machines groaned. The seam awaited our verdict. I breathed, and the air tasted of iron and warning. And then I watched the analyzer begin its work. The room smells of cold metal and boiled cabbage. Fluorescent strips gutter at the ceiling and throw long shadows over crates stamped with the mine sigil. Magos Trell stands like a low-slung statue of brass and bone, one hand resting on his servitor's shoulder, lenses flicking like predatory insects. Bishop Joran's cassock is a bleed of candle wax and dust. He keeps his hands folded so you can see the tremor under his rosary. The cutter woman, Mara, you remember her from the market, leans against a crate with both elbows, the grin of someone who knows how to hold a bargain and a blade at the same time. Voices bounce off the concrete. Everyone waits for you to break the silence. You breathe and realize your lungs have been holding the same air as 1,000 other decisions. Outside, the colony scrapes for food. Children claw at ration stamps. The relay towers have been dark for 3 nights. The outside world is a rumor you can no longer call. Each offer in the room is not merely a deal. Each is a thumb on a scale that will tip the colony toward survival or toward a future none of you will recognize. Magos Trell speaks first, his voice a dry rasp that seems to come from somewhere behind his teeth. He offers the Mechanicum's relief, engineering teams, bulk provisions, a mobile foundry that would anchor the claim for years. The price is simple, voiced with the neutrality of a machine, custody of the ore, for evaluation and extraction by Mechanicum protocols. In our safekeeping, the ore will be preserved, he says, and his lenses glow as if proving the point. In Mechanicus' hands, the chance of complete loss is negligible. There is a servitor clicking behind him, cataloging the room as if it is already a storehouse for data. Bishop Joran's reply is a prayer that turns into an accusation. He says the vein is cursed and must be sanctified. The church will burn and purge and then bury the claim. Absolution requires sacrifice. He speaks of souls, of warding sigils, and the old rites that cleanse filth with fire. It is not merely ritual for him. His fingers flex around a small reliquary, and you can hear the tremble like a bell. Better to lose the ore and save the people's souls, he says, so certain that the words are both protection and threat. Mara's offer is different. It has the clean lines of a trade. She slides a datapad across the crate toward you, and there are manifests, coordinates, a list of ships that run the underlines. Well, take food off-world and come back with meat and grain, she says, voice low. Her crew will ferry loads through gaps in patrols, slip across customs lines where the big ships dare not go. She asks for nothing sacred, only iron, 30% of the ore's weight as collateral until the first run is paid back. No preaching, no inspection, just cargo, and the night routes she knows better than anyone alive on this rock. You think of the foreman who slept 3 days ago in the compressor room, and of Mira, who scavenges spare oxygen pumps to keep her baby alive. You think of the teenagers who sharpen copper spoons into tools, of the women who teach liturgy with cracked smiles. Each bargain buys hours, and it burns something that can't be put back. Trust, allegiance, faces at the next communal meal. This is the calculus you live by now, and it weighs heavy. The sigils on the datapad flicker. Magos Trell steps closer and offers a clause written in glyphs that smell of oil and oath. If you sign, the Mechanicum takes immediate custody. Their teams deploy within the hour. Your conveyor belts and excavators will run under new masters, but the warehouses and feed stores will be filled first. The colony will eat today and every day while the machine works until the ore's valuation is finished. Trell places a neurowriter on the table. Its needle hums like an insect. Custody, he says again, softer. For the good of the Mechanicum and the planet. Bishop Joran plants his palm on the same datapad, and the device flickers with a different interface. He wants the ore destroyed in a ritual that the whole colony will attend, sacrificing the claim to satiety and sanctity. A clear conscience lasts longer than a full stomach, he says, and you can see that he believes himself. His eyes are like coin-op watchmen. Prayer is policy for him. Join us in penance. Let the people see sacrifice. Let them feel that the bell has been rung. He offers sanctified rations, a packet at a time, doled out in exchange for attendance at the purging. Mara smiles like someone who sells the horizon for a price. Her terms are plain, and her greed is honest. She needs your signature too, collateral for the runs. It will be written on a tattered manifest and sealed with ink. She offers the food now in the storerooms behind the market, relief that will stretch for a fortnight if distributed carefully. But you tell me who moves first, she says, glancing at Trell then at Jorn. You sign, we lift. No Mechanicum interference, no sermons in between. There is a dangerous kindness in that promise. You try to listen for a sound that will tell you what to do. The colony hums like a held breath. Outside, someone bangs a pot by way of prayer. A small child laughs, and the sound is too bright. In the corner, a servitor coughs and drops sparks like cinders. Decisions, you are taught, are less about choosing absolutes and more about choosing the lesser ruin. You know none of the choices offered are pure. The Mechanicum's engines will bring order with a price. The bishop's ritual will bind souls and break pockets. Mara's runs will seed a criminal class and open channels that cannot be shut. You think of the miners shifting ore with calloused hands. You think of the generator techs who have been patching turbines with prayer and wire. You think of the mother who hums to her sleeping child and has no idea what a Mechanicum ledger looks like. Your finger hovers over the data pad. You can feel the phosphor glow in the pad's surface like a pulse. Signing feels like exhaling into the open end of a gun. You picture scenarios like a child arranges toys. The Mechanicum arrives, gray banners unfurl, Engineers straighten crooked lampposts and reconfigure the conveyor belts. The work continues, but the town becomes a staging ground. Or Bishop Joran's fire burns the ore, and the town gathers to see the last of the claim reduced to ash. They leave with empty hands but cleansed hearts, or so the priest bids. Or Maras cutters slip under the cover of night and return with barrels, but the colony's law loosens and a market of favors opens in the lee of your decision. Each path changes who you are to each other. You sign. The pen trembles in your hand in a way your face does not. You choose Maras Manifest because you cannot stomach giving the Mechanicum control, and you cannot accept the church certainty of burn. The idea of food arriving tonight is too urgent. Your signature is a crooked thing. It smudges under the datapad's lumen. Mara's smile becomes a line cut into bone. Bishop Joran's jaw tightens. Magos Trell's lenses flash, and for a moment, you see something like a fault line in his calm. Mara clasps your wrist in a grip that leaves a bruise of heat. "We move at dusk," she says. "We take the eastern routes and come back before patrol shift change. You keep the manifest until the first load clears. You owe us accountability." She taps the datapad. You know what happens if a signature is stolen or if a load disappears. Her voice is still a smile, but now it's a warning underneath. Trell's servitor records the signature and begins a silent computation. There is a notary bead that ticks to register the transaction. He does not leave at once. He watches with the patience of a thing that catalogs what it can later prosecute. Joran places a small, cold hand on your shoulder, as if blessing you for making a choice. He murmurs a phrase that could be benediction or condemnation. "May the light show you mercy," he says, and you do not know if he means it. In the hours before dusk, the colony rearranges itself around the lie you made and the hope you injected. Maras runners move through alleys with crates strapped to their backs, whispering passwords into the dark. Someone invites you to a hushed back room and presses 2 bread rolls into your palm. As thanks. Children are given extra ration wafers and told the reason is generosity and cunning. The foreman who found you in the compressor room nods like a man who carries a dangerous secret. People are polite. People are grateful. They are also changing toward you in their faces. There is a new question that sits on them like dust. What price did you pay? Dusk comes like a cold hand. The cutter ships slip into the night, engines masked with the kind of silence that has a taste of smog and ozone. You stand at the storage doors and watch the first crates leave, your palms slick with adrenaline. Mara's crew moves like a shadow pack. The first load is food, barrels of paste, and dried meat that smell of spices you have not had in months. The crowd gathers, relief washing over them in a single messy tide. Tears are present, but not of the sort you associate with absolution. They are small and practical. Then a bell begins to ring from the chapel. It is a single heavy thunk that carries the bishop's displeasure. The sound spreads faster than you can run. Trell's servitor emits a report signal into the silent relays, a cautious ping that will attempt to reach the Mechanicum nodes beyond the void. It is a small rebellion and a small treason, and the colony feels both like salvation and like a stolen thing under a blanket. You notice faces change in that moment. Neighbors who once handed each other tools now measure favor. A woman who taught sewing sets aside her needles and accepts a job packing. Manifests for Mara, she says money will feed her children while the rest of you make morality into speeches. A boy who beat you once now offers to stand a post and watch for patrols. The colony isn't merely fed tonight. It is rearranging, quietly and without ceremony, into factions and loyalties you cannot unmake. You thought you chose for the hunger. Hunger was immediate, visceral. But hunger is also just the first thing. The cut you made will widen into ways you will not predict. There will be bargains in corners, rights in basements, an economy of gratitude and fear. Mara's people leave with cargo and a manifest signed by your hand. A small flag hangs in the marketplace tonight, stitched from the sleeve of one of her jackets. It flaps like a broken promise. You go to sleep with the taste of metal at the back of your throat and the sound of the chapel bell still echoing. Hours feel like an illness. In the night, you dream of conveyor belts turned into roads and priests making lists of the damned, of servitors clipping the names of dissenters for a ledger. You wake with the knowledge of what you set loose. Outside there is movement, different now, skewing toward private deals and guarded conversations. There is a new market at the edges of your town where goods change hands for information. You stand at the entrance of the market as the dawn teeth into the world. The first hand that reaches for the morning loaf is a cutter, quick and efficient. The second is a woman who has been chest-deep in refuse all month, her fingers trembling as though she is praying over a relic. Both hands are human hands. Both say the same thing, that you have changed the terms of survival. In the distance, the relay towers blink. They are not fully online, but signals shimmer across impossible distances in the way machines pretend to be forgiving. You hear a distant, mechanized chime that could be a response or a reprimand. Somewhere beyond the dark, metal voices are aligning. In the market, Mara's runners brace and check straps. Bishop Joran retracts into the chapel with his rosary clenched like a weapon. Magos Trell dispatches a single envoy with a sealed mark and an expression that could be patience or the promise of recalculation. What you wanted was simple. Food for a night, for a week. What you have purchased with your ink is not merely bread. You have purchased a line, thin and invisible, between those who will be called collaborators and those who will be called saved. The first ship leaves the docks. The second sails. You watch them go and the horizon is full of possibility and peril both. You made a choice that will not stay private. You made an agreement that will be tested. The colony wakes around that decision, and already people move differently because of who they trusted. You step back into the crowd, and the sound of boots changes. You know the day will demand you justify the signature, explain the smudge of ink, hold firm when questions come like knives. You have bought time, but you have not bought certainty. The bell rings again, a lower tone. You feel the gravity of the next move settle in your shoulders. You need to keep the supplies flowing and the routes secret. You need to prepare for the Mechanicum's reply and the bishop's displeasure. You need to decide who the colony will become if survival is bartered by ink. You set your jaw, and your next act forms like a coil behind your ribs. You will not let them starve while you plan for the consequences. You will find out what Mara truly means when she says accountability. You will listen for the Mechanicum's counterstroke and for the Church's retribution. You will, with hands that remain unsteady, go to the manifest box, fold it into your pocket, and walk toward the servitor that has been quietly cataloging the morning. There are voices to answer, doors to bar, and a path ahead that will test everything you signed for. You keep your hands on the cold ring of the access hatch until the metal stops trying to pull away from your skin. The plaque is newly hammered, its edges still sharp to the touch. Someone has already filled the letters with black resin, so the names stand out like bruises. You run a fingertip along a syllable and pull back as if scalded. They taught you not to speak those names. That silence is its own kind of ritual now. Outside, the camp smells of diesel and boiled cabbage. The convoy dust has settled into every seam of the settlement. Where rows of crates and spare parts once clustered, there are tidy stacks of ration tins stamped with the Mechanicum cog, and the church has claimed the old hydroponics dome as something like a chapel. A bell, A repurposed air vent peals at odd hours to call the faithful to lookouts rather than prayer. Its tone is wrong, thin, but people answer anyway. They answer because answering keeps them occupied, and because habit still feels like safety when the stars have stopped answering back. Some left with the convoy. You watch the transporter's flares blink and go, watch the dust swallow their shapes until nothing moved but the smoke trails. They left with a pact already stitched into their signatures: ports for passage, credits for silence, children for rehoming in worlds that still talk. Goodbyes were quick as a clipped order. You can't blame anyone for leaving. They took the faces you loved and left them smaller on the horizon. Others stayed. They stayed because there was a choice you made, because when the relays died and the council split, someone had to sign the charter that kept the warmers lit and the compressors running. That charter was written in the margins of the mines ledger, ink dried over names you swore you'd never forget. The ones who stayed were given new titles in exchange for their freedom: labor steward, cog servitor apprentice, sacristan. The mechanicum wanted hands that could be taught to listen like machines. The church wanted mouths that could pray like commands. Titles turned into roles, and roles into bodies shaped for work. You see them in the mornings, hollowed men with glints of brass at their temples, the mechanicum's work. The augmentations are clean and clinical, no triumphant banners, no hymns. A thin bar of metal behind an ear, a plate along a collarbone. It is not ugly. It simply makes them useful in ways that human flesh used to be. The priestesses keep their faces covered in threadbare veils and holy soot. They kneel in front of the cog spire and lay their palms against its cold heart. They murmur ledgers like prayers, counting ore yields instead of sins. Both the priests and the tech priests offer solace, and both demand a price. Children learn to measure the world by absence. Miriam, whose son was in the convoy, places a small tin boat on the canal every dawn. The boat will never reach the fleet, she knows this. She watches it tip and right and tip again, and she counts the days until her boy no longer returns in her dreams. The church took in a different boy. He eats at the refectory now and recites verses about sacrifice. He has been given a place near the forge, where the youth are taught that metal can be prayer. When he lifts a hammer, his knuckles are steady. Sometimes, late at night, you find him at the hatch where the plaque hangs, tracing a name with a grubby finger and then covering it with both hands like a prayer you cannot offer. The mine itself is a closed mouth. Its entrance was shored up with concrete and keyed by a seal that the mechanicum keeps under watch. They put a new plaque on it, a flat, cold thing on which the list of those lost is carved. You can feel the weight of that metal at your back when you stand on the steps and try to breathe without being reminded of the cost. The plaque belongs to history, to law, to a ledger. But it also belongs to the dead, and the living turn away because looking too long at what you chose makes your hands tremble. You were the one who authorized the sealing. That decision was a clean file on the council's table, a stamp in a ledger. It was also the most jagged thing you'd ever done. The engineers argued that sealing preserved veins that would feed futures. The priest argued that sealing sanctified the sacrifice, the church's word for culling the doomed for the many. The convoy captain argued we could save more with mobility than with stockpiles. You listened to them all and then signed. Your signature kept the compressors running for another cycle. It let the forges keep turning. It meant some people left, some people were taken, and the rest remained. You do not tell the children why you signed. You tell them instead about ritual and duty and the slow work of mending. You show up at the bell, and you let your boots take their place in the line. You help to ration bread. You teach the apprentices how to clean a data slate until the ink comes off with a rag. Quiet acts. Small retributions. They do nothing to lift the weight you carry, but they keep your hands busy, and that is what keeps you sane. At night, the Mechanicum's augurs come with blue lanterns and devices that hum like a chorus of beetles. They read the mind's sleeping circuits and say the ore will last longer if fed certain frequencies. The augurs are not unkind. They are, in their way, precise. They do not pretend to mourn. They speak in voltages and output in the names of seams and strata. Still, when one of them unhooks a small cylinder from a rack and slides it toward you, even he lowers his voice. "We can increase output," he says, "but you must allow access to a new cohort." His cohort means the converted, technicians from the colony who will be altered, grafted with something like devotion to the cog. They will not be like before. You look at the cylinder and feel the same tug you felt at the hatch. The price is written in a different currency. You will trade bloodless efficiency for the warmth of unmodified hands, and perhaps the next year, your children will have enough to eat. You swallow. The word choice tastes like iron. Sometimes the church comes after you, not with threats, but with hymns. They call it the warding and the expiation. They insist that the sealing of the mine saved souls, that by closing that throat to the void, you prevented something else from feeding. They preach that isolation is penance that will make you pure. You sit through sermons in which the minister speaks of the night the relays died as if it were a test of faith. He does not mention the convoy or the names on the plaque. He does not have to. His words fit into the gaps the relay left behind and fill them with purpose. Purpose is contagious. Purpose eats at you if you let it. The colonists need an enemy, so they take the silent stars and turn them into one. They draw maps that show the path the convoy took and the places it might be. They mark where the relays burned and where the sky went blank. At night, a small band of scouts still hikes to the old relay towers. They come back with stories that are equal parts superstition and hardware. Blackened dish faces, burnt fuses, scorch marks like caps of old wounds. They whisper about static screams heard through amplifiers, about patterns like voices that made the children cry. You let them tell the tales. They make the nights less loud. Not everyone forgives or forgets. There are two families who will not speak to each other because of a ration passed at dawn that should have been split. There is a miner whose son was among those sent away, who walks the outer wall every hour, and whether from hope or madness, stares into the dark and seems to see the convoy return. You cannot fix any of it. You can only keep the engines warm, and the bell clanging, and the ledger balanced, and the food moving along its appointed route. There are nights you dream of the sealed mine. You imagine it not as a tomb, but as a sleeping god. Strange pipes like veins, lamps like eyes, and the phantom sound of picks tapping in the dark. In the dream you are down there, swinging a pick, and the ore you strike will be enough to feed more than just this colony. In the dream, you are absolved. You wake with the taste of dust and the hum of the compressors. You put on your coat and walk to the hatch and look at the plaque and wonder what the future owes you. You are not the only one who wonders. The Mechanicum wants your approval to begin formal conversions. The church wants your blessing to hold a memorial and an oath ceremony. The children want games and someone to teach them to read the old ship manifests. The colony wants a promise that you cannot give, that it will be the same when the relays come back. None of you will ever be the same. Tonight you slip a small key from the pocket where you keep your signature stamp. The key is dull, a scrap of metal saved from the old transit lockers. It turns in your palm like a secret. You could use it to open the sealed hatch and look, or to prove to the Mechanicum that you are willing to bargain further. You could present it at the altar the priest has set up in the dome and ask for absolution. You could hand it to a boy who will take it to the convoy's route. You tuck the key back. For the moment, you have chosen to do nothing public. That is its own choice. It keeps the boiler running another morning. It keeps the bell ringing another dawn. But you are no longer content with steady maintenance. The ledger entries, the whispers, the new names being added to the list of those who have been altered and reassigned, they stack like unread messages in your chest. A scout reports a faint ping on an old receiver. Someone in the outer watch swears it's a relay ghost and not to be trusted. The Mechanicum asks for access to the receiver and offers in return a protocol that could triangulate faint transmissions. The church offers an evening vigil and a blessing for the watchman. You listen to both offers and fold their promises into your silence. When you step back into the settlement, there is a small group gathered at the edge of the refectory. They are not the faithful or the technicians. They are the families who stayed and those who returned from the watch, those who want more than survival measured in rations. They look at you without the warm deference you had the right to expect. They ask for a meeting. You nod. You could keep your head down and sign every paper the augurs bring you. You could preach comfort and hand over the key to the Mechanicum and the church and sleep. Or you could open the sealed ledger and take the names down one by one and speak them into the wind so that the children will know them as people again. You could ride out after the convoy or take a small team into the mine to see if the engines of sleep are still able to answer. Each choice will change the colony in a single, irreversible direction. You feel the weight of the placket, the hatch like a hand on your shoulder. You feel the key in your pocket, imaginary though it is. The bell tolls twice for the hour. The group waits beneath its thin sound. Your hands are steady now. You speak a word that is not a confession and not a prayer, and it moves like a decision along the line of faces. We decide together, you say. They breathe as one, and the watchman's ping hums low in the air, uncertain, promising, perhaps lying. You step forward to the table where the ledger lies open. The ink is dry, and the names are waiting. You will sign a new line. You will choose a path that bends the colony toward a future you cannot see. Your signature will be the currency that buys warmth and time and scars. You lift your pen,